All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Hawaii Retirement Show. Got a special guest on this episode, Chris Naffziger, certified personal trainer. We're going to talk a little healthy aging, health span, staying fit in retirement. And with that, Chris, if you want to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do.
Yeah, Jason, thank you for having me on the podcast. So my name is Chris Naffziger, and originally I'm a Hoosier, transplanted to Hawaii over 10 years ago now. And I was with Whole Foods Market, and that's what brought me out here in the first place. And I never expected to still be here. But I met a beautiful girl that's born and raised from out here. Jason, you know what that's like.
Yes.
And so now, as you know, we're married happily just over 3 years, and I absolutely couldn't be any more happy to still be out here in Hawaii and still with Whole Foods Market. But I also recently made a big life transition over the last 2 years or so and got my certified personal training certificate. So I've just started over the last 6 months taking on clients and doing virtual personal training.
Awesome. Yeah, so me and you've known each other for a while, and I'm happy to have you on here. And you've always had the nice chiseled jawline, whereas mine, as you can see, I'm working on the double chin here. So your advice, your advice here might behoove me to follow. But yeah, so to kick it off, I know you're familiar with him. There's this, I guess he's a he's a medical doctor, health scientist, Peter Attia, right? And he makes this analogy of, your fitness level is like saving for retirement, in that you can't just get fit at the end, right? You gotta work on it throughout your whole life there. And I really like that, and especially when I look at things, health from a financial advisor perspective. Being healthy can save you a lot of money and can really, be a multiplier to your financial success and whatnot in retirement. I'm sure you agree with everything there, right?
So far, so good, sir.
Okay, so I want to touch on this article I found from MarketWatch just this morning that I thought offers up some good points and some good context along those lines. And it's entitled, Here's How Much Being Healthy Will Cost You Over a Lifetime. People who are not in good health earn less. And it says, being in poor health can cost you big. People who are unhealthy earn lower incomes, put away fewer dollars in savings, and accumulate less wealth over the years compared to those who are healthy. This study is done by the National Bureau of Economic Research conducted by University of Georgia and the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. So here's the stats here, and this is what I think is interesting. And chime in if you want to add anything to it here. It says healthy people accumulate more wealth over time and earn more money. They make about 28% more than unhealthy people over their lifetime. The average healthy 65-year-old with a high school degree has $230,000 in wealth compared to $120,000 for an unhealthy 65-year-old. And this is 2017, so the numbers are probably higher by now. But last point is, unhealthy people work less, which I thought was real interesting. Participation in the labor supply among the healthy is at 90%, while participation for unhealthy people is 70%. And then I'll just wrap it up here. Poor health affects individuals in 4 ways: decreasing productivity, making individuals less useful at work, lower survival probability, and increase medical spending. And my takeaway from that is that, being healthy does a lot more for us than just, putting on muscles or making us look good, right? I mean, there's a mind-body sort of interplay there where we're more productive, right? We're more engaged in life, it seems like. What are your thoughts there?
So a bunch of thoughts come to mind. The first thing that I'm thinking about while you're reading those statistics is, my guess is it's probably more so that the reason these folks have done well financially and have been able to save and create a nice financial lifestyle for themselves is in part because they're disciplined. And it's more, my guess is it's not the other way around. It's not that they were able to become wealthy and save a lot of money and then decided to get healthy. I could be wrong, but that's my supposition, is that it's the former, not the latter. So a lot of what I talk about with my clients is, there's a million different ways to get healthy. There's a lot of modalities. There's a lot of different exercises, a lot of different programs. What's important is the discipline,
Mm.
and that takes some getting used to. It's for most people, that's something that's trained and that's something that's acquired, and it has to come from within. I can create programs for folks all I want to. I can encourage them, but ultimately it has to be down to them to have that discipline. And so once you have that discipline in your fitness aspect of your life, I think that'll cross over into some other aspects. And my guess is that's what's helping to lead these folks to a more rosier outlook with their financial picture as well.
No, that's a great point. My counter to that, though, is, and I think I'm not countering it really. I completely agree. But I would also say, with the way our healthcare system is in the United States, it's very expensive. Long-term care insurance, if you're getting a policy, or if you just need to go in a long-term care home, and a lot of these diseases, cancer, heart disease, whatever it is, towards the end of your life can be really expensive, and they can drag on, and you need a lot of healthcare, and it takes a big financial toll uh, on individuals, and it's hard digging yourself out if you don't have the funds early on in life to cover those medical expenses. Um, and I think you can burn through a lot of those retirement savings in retirement if you do have a major health issue that can take a big hit to your overall net worth and your financial goals. But I like what you said there, and I wasn't thinking that discipline definitely probably plays a big part in who these people are and their outcomes.
Let me ask you something. I've always wanted to ask you this for a while now. So, as a financial planner, because I also, one of my other loves, in addition to fitness, is financial planning, wealth management, those types of things. So, when you're talking to someone about who's maybe just starting out, or maybe a little bit behind, or hasn't done a lot to get themselves on a secure financial footing, what's the biggest pushback that you hear from people when you're trying to convince them that this is something they should take seriously? What's the biggest objection or pushback that you get? Because I have a guess.
The biggest objection. So what I do with mostly is I would say I specialize in retirement planning. So I help
Yeah.
individuals kind of towards the end of the road when they've accumulated some form of wealth and they need to manage distributions throughout retirement.
Okay.
But but uh but if I
And
had
just general conversations with other young people or whomever you
right,
talk
right,
to day to day. What do they say when you're like, is this something you should take seriously? You should really, it's better to get started yesterday. The best time to get started was yesterday.
right.
Second best time is today. What is the pushback that you get?
Well, again, I think it goes back to your discipline and patience in knowing that you're sacrificing. There's trade offs in life, right? You're sacrificing
Yeah.
something today for something that's kind of uncertain in the future.
Ding,
And
ding, ding. That's exactly what I figured you might say, is that people say, what do I care? I'm just gonna, when my number gets called, then it gets called. And if I only have $5 to my name, then that's the breaks. But to me, uh, if you can have that discipline to get started early so that you're in a good position to work with someone like yourself,
mm-mm,
to manage that wealth, because once you do get to a certain level, that's when it's really time to bring someone else in to help you navigate those financial waters.
right.
Um, but if you have that discipline, I think you will put yourself in a much better position to have such a long life. And in that book that you reference, I believe the name is called Outlive by Peter Attia,
Mm,
if I remember correctly. I read it a couple times. So you think I should remember it, but
right.
one of the reasons that you put in this work with your physical fitness is so that you can have a long health span. And in the book, he describes the word health span being different from lifespan. Lifespan being just how long you live, but health span meaning how many of those years are really productive, vibrant, you're flourishing, you feel good with mind, body, and spirit. And if you A, have fitness discipline and B, have financial discipline, I think they go hand in hand and you put yourself in a really good position to not only have a long lifespan, keeping your costs down, your healthcare costs down in your latter years, but also having a really good quality of life in those last several chapters of your life.
100%. And I think this falls into the category, unfortunately, of, you know, some things are easier said than done. We all know we got to eat more vegetables. It's very simple, right? But it's like, why is there so much friction around just that simple step? And I think in for a lot of people, and I'm just speaking for here in the U.S. And in Hawaii, right? Is if you're grinding and you're just making it by, it's really hard to justify saving for the future because your kind of window of focus narrows into the present, right? I need to make it.
Hmm.
And also
Hmm.
too, there is, if you're busting your butt working hard, it's really hard to tell somebody don't reward yourself with a little bit of with a little carrot and put that
Yeah,
money into savings. And I'm not
yeah,
I think you're 100% correct, but there is that friction there, and I think it is really hard for some people. Now, if you
yeah.
have that discretionary income, it's an easier choice. So it's like philanthropists who are billionaires or multimillionaires giving away money. I mean, let's draw some comparisons to what that's like for individuals like me and you, right? There's a lot more friction for me and you. And I think savings is the same way. When you're earning a certain threshold, it's a lot easier, right? Because you have a little bit more wiggle room and discretionary income to do that.
I also think that yes, all of that is true. I think if you really are grinding and barely making ends meet and only have just enough money to last for the entire month, then it is maybe time to just take a second look at where each dollar is going.
Mhm.
Because if you're just doing what you've always done and not putting any critical thought into it, there could be some subscriptions that
Sure.
maybe you don't need. Maybe that $50 a month that you spend on subscriptions would be better, or at least it's worth the thought to put maybe towards an HSA or a plan for your college, your kids going to college. There's a couple of the tax advantage
Right.
or savings plans for college. I can't remember the acronyms and everything, but just at least, if nothing else, taking that time to reevaluate and looking at where every dollar is going and making sure that you are really putting every dollar where you want to put it, and there truly isn't any, if after all of that there really isn't any more dollars for long-term savings, then I understand that. I would also say that maybe it's time to take a critical look at the side of the equation where you're earning. What is the job? Is there a way to get another certification that would take you to the next level in your job, or is it maybe time to look at a career change where something might be more lucrative? We
Right.
need to get more coming in. Uh, Also, final point on all of that: push-ups and sit-ups and air squats, pull-ups in the park. None of that costs a dollar. So if you really truly don't have any equipment, there are ways that you can set yourself up to have a nice long health span even without spending a dollar, I would contend.
Sure. No, I like that. And I think both the fitness, health, and saving for retirement and managing money, they both rely heavily on delayed gratification, right? And
Yeah,
that's
good
hard
point.
to come by. Okay,
And I
let's
think I think it's
sorry, go ahead.
sorry to cut you off there, but I think it's a something has to a switch has to go off. You can't. It's almost like believe it or not, I used to smoke when I was young, when I
So did
was
I, right.
20 years ago. Did you really? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
And so people would tell you got to quit, and it really just takes something in your head to finally
mm,
say, you know what, I'm just not going to smoke anymore. And thank God, 20 years ago plus now, that switch went off. I can't remember what it was, but it's, one day I just woke up and said, I'm done. I can't do, I shouldn't be doing this anymore. And so I think it's a psychological thing
Mhm.
for your physical fitness and your, financial wellness,
Yeah.
that you really just have to want it. If it matters to you, you will do it. And
Right.
so,
Right.
however you get to that place where it actually truly matters to you, where you finally realize how important these things are, then it's going to become a passion, and then it's going to be like you game on, and you're really going to be hyper focused. But until that, if you're just kind of holding these things at arm's length, it's tough to really find success. But once you
Right.
really get both feet on the playing field and get in the game, then it's game on.
100%. I totally agree. And I think uh, having those kind of revelations, or when it all clicks in your head, that light
Yeah.
bulb turn on moment, it's just it's getting to that point. But once it clicks and you say, okay, so you're telling me if I just keep putting money in this box with compounding interest, it's going to
Yeah.
keep growing to this big number? Wow, it
Yeah.
clicked. And it's for some
Yeah.
reason you could tell people that, but it doesn't click. But once it clicks for people, then it kind of, you're off to the races, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that moment when in showing people, what if you put $50 a month or $100 a month or $10 a week into, a money market account, whatever that interest rate is getting you at your 10, 20, 30, 40, how much you actually put in versus how much that's going to be worth. That's the moment where a lot of people go, holy smokes, like I can't believe I got to get in right now. And I think for on the fitness side, it's I'm starting to feel like my pec feels a little bit bigger than it. Wow, my shoulders popping out a little bit farther than it used to, and that's that moment when when
Sure.
you start to feel all right. Now I'm seeing some results, and I see why I need to do this, and that's the psychological switch has been flipped.
Sure. No, absolutely. Yeah, let's jump into some practical. So this is the Hawaii Retirement Show, so we're not going to talk too much about how to become an all-state linebacker for the Bows or whatever it is,
That's
right?
good because I don't know how to do that. I just support the Bows. I don't know how to become. Don't ask me how to become a linebacker for them.
I
They'll
love the
ask me how to do
UH. I
that.
love the UH hoodie. I know we're both big. We
Baseball
go.
season's less than a month away, big
Yeah,
boy.
yeah. I always enjoy going to games with you, supporting the Bows. Um,
Absolutely, and I won't give you any side eye if we get a couple warrior dogs. All bets are off for the ballpark.
I'm trying to get healthier. This is 2025. No Warrior dogs. No big Heineken beers there at the
Yeah,
concession.
just get the small Heineken.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Small changes, right? Compounding over
yep,
time. Uh,
absolutely, brick by brick.
okay, so let's talk about as we age. That's kind of what I wanted to ask you about and focus on
Mhm.
is kind of our health and fitness as we age. And I think a good place to start is maintaining strength and kind of best practices for maintaining some muscle, some functional mobility with strength, and kind of things we can do there or what people should be considering.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to unpack there. I don't want to get too deep in the reads because it does get pretty complex. But essentially, I have the statistic written down here to make sure I don't butcher it. So after you get to age 30, adults typically on average lose 3 to 5% of their muscle mass per decade. And so that's why a lot of times when you see someone's in their 60, 70, 80-year old decade bracket, that it's clear that they're a little bit more wiry than they used to be when you look at pictures of them from an earlier age. And so all in kind of in parallel with retirement, with saving for retirement, the best time to get started is now.
Mhm.
And so that doesn't mean that, if you're 50 or 60 or 70, all is lost and you can't do something to try to stave off that loss of muscle mass. But the best time to do it is right now. And so strength training, and I think we'll get into it here in a little bit, but cardiovascular fitness, those are the two biggest. I think there's kind of six pillars of your physical fitness, and those are the biggest two for me is muscular development and cardiovascular health.
Hmm.
And so again, this doesn't have to be, you don't have to overthink it, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. The internet is a incredibly valuable tool for so many different things. And if you just have to Google, if you don't have any equipment at all, and you're 50 years old or you're 35 or whatever, just Google in there, basic body weight strength training program,
Mhm.
and get started. And
Right.
the things I would suggest if you have the means is to bring on someone in a consultant role who can at least be a coach for your form,
Mm.
even if you're doing everything at home or even if you don't have any equipment, because it's still, you want to maintain proper form to avoid injury. I think we're going to also talk about the effects of injury later, but strength training to grow the muscle mass that you need. So once you grow your muscle mass by whatever age you are, that decline, well, you'll be starting from a higher place. So once, hopefully for me, once I reach, God willing, the age of 80, 85, 90 years old,
Mm.
I'm still going to be pretty spry and I'm still going to have muscle mass that's going to enable me to lift a suitcase and put it in the overhead bin in an airport. It's going to enable me to walk out of the grocery store with, full bags of groceries. If there is a thing called grocery stores, and when I'm 85, who knows what the world will look like? We'll probably be able to telepathically change locations. Who knows? But
Right.
I'm just going under the assumption that we will still need to use our physical bodies when I'm, by the time I'm 40 years, when I'm in my 80s. But those are the things we need to work on now to create that muscle mass, so that as that muscular lean muscle in our bodies declines, we're still going to be in an advantageous position by the time we're in our older years.
Yeah, and I don't doubt. I picture Chris here in his 80s, and he's still got his fastball. I don't doubt it.
I might have
Uh,
lost a few miles per hour, but I could still zip it across the plate. Hopefully, when I'm 80 to 85, God willing.
so I'll make this distinction between, we're drawing a lot of parallels between, saving and fitness and health. The one distinction I would make is if you stop saving, you still have your saved uh, money if it's invested in
Hmm.
retirement accounts or wherever it is, and it can continue growing.
Yeah,
The one really uh, hard point to get over
hard.
with fitness is
Yeah,
that if you just stop, so let's say you start now and
yeah,
let's say you're in your 30s or 40s, but if you stop, you lose pretty quickly all those
yeah.
gains, and you gotta start getting your momentum back to get back up the hill. So it seems like consistency, even if it's a lower to moderate, amount of effort, the consistency seems to be most important. Is that correct?
Discipline, man. We just keep going back to this. I keep in my head just going back to this same word. It's about creating, like I talked about with a client who, by the way, is in his 60s just the other day. I mean, who's just getting started. And my focus with a client who's just starting at any age, the programming is what it is. But the main focus in my head is, how do I get this person to create the discipline and get it in their mind that this is a priority.
Hmm.
And so that is the key, is just making sure that you have that discipline. But the reason I bring all this up is, if you do stop, if you do go on vacation, or if you do break your ankle and you're not able to work out for X amount of months, or even if you just say, I've had it, and you just take 6 months off for whatever reason, the weight room is still going to be there. The resistance bands are still going to be there. Body weight training will
Hmm.
always be there. These things you got to just say,
Sure.
I'm going to come back to this when I'm ready for it. So just, if you it's you've heard it a bunch of times. People are going on a nutrition plan or a diet, and then they give up after 3 days or 8 days or
Right.
whatever. But if you have a bad day, or if you have a bad week or a bad month or whatever, that does happen. Nobody's perfect, but you need to reestablish your footing and get back after it. And I know you talked about the tough part of this being that, with your muscular lean mass, you are going to decline. There's no way around that. Whereas
Mhm.
with your retirement plan, you can get to a place and you can still see it grow.
Right.
The beauty of this, and I love the analogy that getting in shape and working on your fitness, the analogy to retirement. And I think, I'm not going to take credit for this, but I think I read it, remember reading it in Peter Attia's book or hearing it on one of his podcasts. He talked about, you're working out to get those benefits of a long health span, nice muscular mass, good respiratory system, but you get the benefits right now. You get to look good. You get the
Sure.
aesthetic benefits right now. So that you
Uh,
don't really get with retirement.
That's true,
with
right?
retirement saving. That you have to wait to, build 59 and a half or whatever the number is now. If you're going to get fit, a reasonably fit person, 6 to 12 months, really disciplined, they're going to be able to enjoy those aesthetic benefits
Mhm.
going forward. So that maybe is the counterweight to the bummer of not being able to use your benefits
Sure.
in retirement till later on. With fitness, you can access that benefit relatively quickly.
Yeah, no, great point. Great point on that. Let's shift over to talking about. So you mentioned earlier, you want to have good form, right? Regardless of whether
Hmm.
you're young and you're doing some barbell deadlifts or something, or if you're
Yeah.
older and you're just doing some simple, chair squats or something, right? You want to
Hmm.
have good form because good form helps prevent injuries. And
Correct.
as we uh, as we age, I think it's pretty counter. I think it's pretty well known that we're more prone to injuries, right? I mean, sometimes
Yeah.
now when I'm not that old, but there's times when I sneeze and get out of bed and I feel like something might have been put out of place. But so there is that importance of having good form with working out. And then the other thing is we've all probably read these articles at some point of how big of the impact it is of maintaining balance, because when people fall and they're elderly or they break a hip or whatever it is, there's all these crazy statistics about just how, I guess, how hard it is for them to come back and how much of a downward trajectory their kind of health goes on after one of
Hmm.
those instances. And so maybe you could touch on that. I think what falls into here, and I know you mentioned it to me, and I'm not too familiar with it, is the DEXA scan
Yeah.
thing as well. So maybe if you want to just kind of touch on all that.
Yeah. So real quick on form, that is, like I said, the danger of just going online, downloading a fitness plan and getting started on your own, especially if you have no prior experience with resistance training. Inevitably, I've been focusing on this for the last 2 or 3 years, and I still every month meet with my personal trainer and go over my form on more and more key movements. I videotape myself, not because I'm so vain, but because I actually watch that and compare that to proper form for each movement, make sure that I don't notice anything. Because, as you alluded to right there, if you, especially as you get up in your latter years, a potential injury can be debilitating for a lot of reasons and costly and can be a particularly gnarly spiral. So I'm
Mhm,
told. Luckily, I haven't had that happen to me yet personally, but that's why I'm putting in all of this work.
mhm.
So, having said all that, the DEXA scan. This is something I just came onto last year, and I am a huge proponent of this. I just had a client of mine. I think he's doing his this week. But when I get started with someone, I can't recommend that to them enough. Is doing a DEXA scan. It stands something about X-rays, dual X-ray, something or other. I can't remember what the A stands for. Somewhere I can't even pronounce anyway. But essentially, what it does is you go and real quick. If you have any metal implanted in your metal implanted in your body, that will uh, preclude you from being able to do it. So that's the first thing they ask you if you have a metal hip or whatever it might be. So luckily for me, I didn't. So when I went to do mine, I could do it. And they X-ray your body, lay down, they X-ray you, and a day or two later, they give you a 2-page printout, and it essentially analyzes your body fat, your lean muscle mass, and I think arguably most importantly, your bone density. And so this gives you a picture. It gave me a real insight into not only, where my body fat was, and that was all just kind of fluff. It was right around where I thought it would be, but the bone density was a total new thing to me. I had never had that
Mm,
measured. I had no idea what that was going to look like. And honestly, I was a bit disappointed. I mean, it was basically saying my bone density was about where it should be for a male of my age.
mhm.
I want to be better than that. I don't want to just be average for my age as a somewhat of a overachiever. Not that I was always like that, but now, especially in the fitness space,
Mhm.
I want to be ahead of the curve. And so I went and asked my trainer immediately. This is a year or so ago. I went and asked him. I said, "Well, how do I get my bone density better?" And his answer was one word. I'll never forget. He said, "Load."
Mm, mm, mm.
Lifting weights, carrying weights. That's like our superpower as humans. That's that we're able to carry things. And
Mhm.
so in my fitness program, I do a lot of loaded carries or overhead carries. to work on my bone density.
Mhm.
And so I've made it a point to schedule my DEXA scan every year around my birthday. That's my birthday present to myself, to see year on year if I've made any gains. And again, I'm not as concerned with the lean muscle mass, although from a vanity point of view, I'm interested in that. But mostly, I'm interested to see from a health span perspective where my bone density is and if I've made any improvements. And even if it's just the slightest little marginal increase, that means that all the work that I was doing, not only was I getting the aesthetic benefits that we all like or that I like, but I'm able to make my bones even stronger so that down the road in my my older years, if I do happen to have that fall, hopefully I'll be able to bounce back quicker and it won't be as debilitating and costly as it might be for someone else.
Very
And
interesting.
by the way, real quick, on since the good listeners of the Hawaii Retirement Show are mostly, I would assume, based here in Hawaii, I got mine done at the UH Cancer Center. It's over on Ala
Mm.
Moana. So if you just Google UH Cancer Center DEXA scan, DEXA, you'll see it. I think it was like $70, so it's not cost prohibitive. It wasn't super expensive to do, and it was easy to schedule, and only took 10 minutes when I was there. So can't recommend the DEXA scan enough.
Perfect. That was my follow-up question. Where are we doing this and how much? But that's good to
Yeah.
know. Yeah, that's not asking
And
too
if you don't
much.
live here, I'm sure just Google, DEXA scan near me.
Right.
There's facilities that you can get it done wherever you live. You can find a place not too far away that'll do it.
Gotcha. Um, the forever controversial topic of diet. I don't even know if we want to get there because I feel like the conversation around diet is one of the most, uh, just endless information that tells you eggs are good, endless information that tells you eggs are bad, and it seems like there's no real way to get to a definitive conclusion on any of that,
Right.
other than processed foods bad, right? I mean, whole foods good,
Yeah.
right? I don't know if you want to get any deeper into the weeds on that, or
I'm not here to settle the debate about whether eggs are good for you or bad for you. If your listeners tuned into the podcast to get a definitive answer on that, I'm sorry to disappoint them. I'm not here to settle that debate. So that debate rages on. The way I go about this, a couple of things I'll touch on. One, right now, I'm currently 18 days into the month of January, sober January. So I take January every year to kind of refocus my inputs, what I'm putting in my body,
right,
and take that opportunity just to cleanse out my system and make sure I'm not taking in any alcohol. In addition to that, I'm also tracking what I eat pretty religiously this month. And so I would also encourage listeners who are thinking about getting serious about their fitness to, even for a week, for a few days, for a month, whatever you can possibly do, is to take a look at what you are eating. Because a lot of times you'll be shocked. For me, it wasn't that shocking because I've done this before. It was landing about where I thought it would. But in general, for the mass population, if you actually truly track what you put into your body, you'd probably be pretty surprised about how many calories you're taking in, how much fat you're taking in, all that stuff. So that's another thing that I can't encourage people enough to do, is to actually track their food intake for a little while. Having said all that, what should you put into your body? The way that I approach this is I do eat processed foods. There's kind of a spectrum for processed foods. I mean,
mhm,
ultra processed down to bread. I mean, I eat bread. Personally, I don't consider it to be an ultra processed food. People have been eating bread for centuries.
mhm,
What I try to do is minimize the things that my ancestors centuries ago would not recognize as food.
mhm.
So they would probably not know what Doritos potato chips are. They would not recognize that. They wouldn't understand what to even do with a potato chip bag. They might even try to eat the bag because they weren't sure what in the heck it was. So only try, and deep down, I think people, yeah, there's some confusion about what's healthy and what's not. But I think deep down, people kind of have a food conscience where they know I could probably be making a better decision than this. But essentially, I just try to eat as much minimally processed food as I can. And that includes, of course, lots of fruits and vegetables, the things that we've seen ever since grade school on a food pyramid. The other thing I would also point out, though, which can get tricky if you are trying to stick with a relatively plant-centric diet or a vegan or vegetarian diet, is protein intake. Protein is the building block to lean muscle mass, and so you really want to try to shoot what the recommendation is by whichever governing agency you look at is pretty low. It's kind of like a recommend minimum daily allowance. If you're truly trying to put on lean muscle mass, the accepted target that you should look at is for your ideal body weight. If I'm trying to be 175, I would want to have about 175 grams of protein a day, and that's hard. It's not easy to do that, and so I would also challenge people to not only track their caloric intake, but take a look at their protein intake. When I did that several years ago, or a couple years ago, I was only eating about half the recommended amount of protein to get the muscle mass increases that I was looking for. So to sum up, don't get too lost in the reads on nutrition. Most people, I think, have a good food conscience when they're really honest with themselves and they know what's something good to eat and something bad. Try to minimize the amount of ultra high processed foods that are out there. If your ancestors wouldn't recommend it or wouldn't know what it is, it's probably not something that you should be putting in your body. Try to incorporate as much fresh fruits and vegetables as you can. And also just try to hit your protein target, which if you are trying to keep the amount of animal protein down in your diet, take a look at, you can Google, plant-based substitutes for protein, and also maybe find a vegetarian or vegan protein powder to use as a supplement. You don't just want to drink scoop after scoop after scoop of vegetarian protein powder, but incorporate some of that into your diet to help to get that protein level where you want it to be.
Awesome. Yeah, all good stuff there. Chris, I really appreciate you.
And I assume that's exactly what you're doing right now, Jason, since you said you're focusing on your health. You're already, I'm preaching to the choir, I'm preaching to the converted, right? You're already doing all that, I assume?
I'm working on it. Incremental changes is my mantra here for 2020.
Yep. Rome was not built in a day, nor will your body be. So brick by brick, you're building your castle, your internal castle in your body.
Right. Yeah, I mean, great conversation. I think the big takeaway is, it's never too late to get started. Just like we kept coming back to the word discipline and consistency there. And I do see, there's a vibrance and sharpness to people as they age if they are healthier and fitter. And I think they enjoy their retirement that much more. Chris Naffziger, certified personal trainer here on Oahu. Chris, thanks so much for joining us. If people want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Yep. So ironically, I've kind of created a website and a brand. Chris is not nice. It's kind of tongue in cheek. I think I actually feel like I'm a relatively nice person. I think most people that know me feel like I'm a nice person. And so it's a bit tongue in cheek, the humor there. But also from a training perspective, that's kind of where the alter ego comes in. I am a nice person. I am nice with clients because I love them, but I'm also not going to sugarcoat things just to keep them on as a client. I want to be as transparent and real. And sometimes that might come across as not nice because it's tough love. It's coming from a place where I really want to see them succeed. So having said all that, chrisisnotnice.com is my website. Chris is not nice 808 on Instagram because someone apparently already has Chris is not nice. I don't know why that happened, but Chris is not nice 808 on Instagram is where they could find me. And then Chris is not nice at gmail.com. Or they could just bug you and say, what's Chris Naffziger's, how do I get in touch with Chris Naffziger? And you could pass along my info.
Perfect. Chris, appreciate it. This was great. To our listeners, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch everyone on the next one.
You got it, brother.
The opinions and statements presented on this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. Never make any investment or financial decisions based on information offered on this show without first consulting your financial, legal, or tax advisor. All economic and performance information mentioned on the show is historical in nature and is not indicative of any future results. All indices mentioned on this show are unmanaged and cannot be invested in directly. All information is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy. Lastly, all opinions expressed by Jason Cutitta and any guests on the show are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of or are endorsed by ToBA Financial. For Jason Cutitta, investment advisory services are offered through ToBA Financial LLC, a registered investment advisor offering advisory services in the state of Hawaii and in other jurisdictions where exempt from registration.